This recording is brought to you by Terrestrial Media. Credits to 11 Labs for the voices. Faenore, Book 1, Part 1, The Royal Celebration. Across a vast sky that covers the world, there exists many forms and shapes. Underneath, all realms resided, where various lands, creatures, beings, peoples took refuge. One such land was Arendor. In the realm of Arendor, in the vast country of lords, in the capital city of Obsidian, the free peoples of the West prepared for a blessed event. All were abuzz for a grand celebration, the birth of a son, a prince, to King Arathor and his third wife, Queen Merithia. All across the city, from the opulent quarters to the slums, people gathered. Music filled the streets, and soft lights flickered, drawing in the crowds, including the enigmatic Wysard, Arcanus. Obsidian was a city like no other. Its name derived from the gleaming black stone that rested in its grandest mountains, titled the Obsidian Trove. Its monuments, decorated and built using this precious source of trade and opulence, its tall and dark, sleek and elegant appearance gave the city its historic title. The city was vast, with towering spires and sprawling plazas, woven together by streets lined with ancient trees whose leaves now shimmered in the golden hues of autumn, and which in the summer bloomed flowers of crescent, deep indigo. The air was filled with the scent of spices from distant lands and the sweet aroma of freshly baked pastries from local bakeries. In the heart of the city stood the Royal Palace, a magnificent structure with walls of polished obsidian that seemed to absorb the light of the sun and moon alike. It is well known that this generates some amount of energy. Its grand halls were adorned with paintings, tapestries, and beautifully stained glass depicting the history of Arendor, from the great battles of the past to the prosperous reign of King Arathor. The palace gardens, usually a place of serene beauty, were now a hive of activity as servants and nobles alike prepared for the evening's festivities. The common folk of Obsidian were no less excited. In the bustling market square, merchants hawked their wares with renewed vigor, their stalls overflowing with exotic goods and festive decorations. Children ran through the streets, their laughter mingling with the melodies of street musicians. Every corner of the city seemed to be alive with anticipation, a testament to the momentary unity and joy this royal birth brought to the realm. As the sun set, the city transformed into a wonderland of light and sound. Lanterns of every color imaginable hung from doorways and trees, casting a warm, inviting glow over the revelers. The music grew louder, a harmonious blend of traditional Arendorian tunes and the latest compositions from the court musicians to the exotic. Amidst this jubilant crowd walked an old Wysard, known as Arcanus, a figure of mystery and power. His plain robes billowed in the evening breeze, and his eyes, deep and knowing, spiraled with intensity and seemed to take in every detail of the city. Wysards, or Skywards, as some called them, were wise and learned beings said to hail from other realms, although most considered this notion a mythical belief propagated by cultists and nothing more. Most saw them as dangerous, strange, and traditionalists of the ancient ways, out-of-touch folk some called them. Wysards were thought to hail from many directions, each representing some sparked fragment of universal force. The lore of Arendor spoke of the Wysard's origins, shrouded in mystery and legend. It was said that long ago, when the world was still young, a great cosmic event occurred. Stars aligned in a way never seen before or since, and from this alignment, the first Wysards emerged. Each Wysard embodied a different aspect of the universe: light and shadow, fire and water, earth and air. They were the keepers of ancient knowledge and wielders of immense power, tasked with maintaining the balance of the world. Yet no Wysard could truly recall their origins in full, as if a dream. Arcanus, the Wysard present in Obsidian, was known to represent the element of the heavy of the light. At least, this is what is propagated by the obsidiary. The obsidiary are a group of local believers whom have often challenged the mythiciary. Arcanus was both feared and respected, his presence a reminder of the ancient pacts that held the realm together. Despite his mysterious nature, Arcanus had always shown a deep loyalty to Arendor and its people. Of course, the reasons for this was known only to a few. Arcanus's true allegiance was to the realm and all creatures under the sky, existing as a silent watcher, intervening only when the balance was threatened. The citizens, with their modern lives and bustling city, often found it hard to relate to the Wizard's archaic ways. However, during moments of great significance, like the birth of a new prince, the presence of a Wizard was seen as a good omen, a sign that the ancient forces still watched over the realm. As Arcanus wondered, passers-by would whisper and gossip. Some asked for blessings, some attempted to haggle with him. Arcanus attended to what he could, had moved toward the urgent business that Obsidian called of him, meaning he would be late.
"I've said it at least 17 times,
grumbled Herm, a somewhat average creature caught up in extraordinary company. The attendant to the king approached again, asking for the arrival of Arcanus.
"He is coming, I promise."
Herm reassured her yet again, to eye rolls from appointees, servants, and bystanders. Annoyed at the attitude, Herm stated,
"Fools are universal."
He mused wryly.
"Jerks, much the same,"
Herm said, just so others could hear, as he navigated his feelings of embarrassment.
"Why do I even bother?"
Herm thought, navigating through the throngs of towering folk.
"Wizards are supposed to be on time. Oh, Hemlock's beard, I need something to settle my stress."
Herm often became flustered, even amidst the most quaint of gatherings. The royal celebration did no favors to his anxiety. To add to it all, Arcanus was late. Herm grumbled and mumbled, appearing odd and quirky as he wandered over to a table, serving a well-presented and delightful lemon drizzle cake.
"He is always late, and I take the brunt of the abuse."
Herm sighed, picked a piece of lemon cake, placed it on his plate, and wandered over to watch some Vanima dancers. Herm took a moment, looked at the cake. Appreciating good cake craftsmanship was an art form for some. Herm took a bite and watched on. The dancers smiled as they saw him, their appearance sharp, slender, and pointed. Herm blushed as they gracefully swayed and moved with an elegance that rivaled the elves.
"Foolish little Herm,"
he thought.
"These wonders before my senses wouldn't glance a fascination with Herm, a creature without stature or significance."
Herm thought to himself, taking a bite of his cake, keeping an eye out for Arcanus and watching the dancers as they moved gracefully and alluringly.
"One of the many expenses luxury can afford is high-quality entertainment,"
Herm stated, finishing off his cake. Herm put his plate aside and wandered through the festivities, trying to engage himself and avoid appointees asking him about Arcanus. His curiosity and embarrassment drove him to explore the many wonders on offer. He saw magnificent displays of fireworks, acrobats performing gravity-defying feats, and musicians playing enchanting tunes that filled the air with magic. As he wandered, he recalled the stories Arcanus had shared with him about the various creatures of the world, like the fearsome Dracalion and the elusive Luthwin. Arcanus's tales of adventure and danger made him love and fear the excitement of the wild, away from all this pomp. He remembered Arcanus describing the Dracalion as mighty beasts of the old world whose tongues were coveted for their alchemical properties.
"A Dracalion tongue is too difficult to come by,"
Herm recalled Arcanus saying.
"For you see, my dear Herm, most Dracalion, yes, old creature, too hard, too dangerous to approach."
But it was the Luthwin that truly fascinated Herm. Arcanus had at times shared some tidbits of information about them, saying,
These entities, and they must be regarded as such, possess strikingly beautiful forms and features more deserving than all the gems under the earth. But make no mistake, Herm, though denizens of sorts, know they to be as dangerous as the Dracolian. Perhaps more so, creatures that devours souls.
As Herm continued to wander, he overheard snippets of conversation from various groups. A pair of philosophers debated the nature of existence, one arguing that the world was but a shadow of a greater reality, while the other insisted that everything was a creation of the mind. Nearby, others discussed the whispers of terrible acts by cultists, their words sending shivers down Herm's spine.
Did you hear those cultists are at it again? Yes, they have started sacrificing to some unnameable creature,
said one voice.
Cultists, you say? Bizarre folk. They orgy themselves, it's just so disgusting. All cultists are the same. Utter filth,
Scoffed another, prompting gasps from those around. Herm thought,
It is, in some or most cases, the odd nature of wealth to change a person inward. Its tendency, I mean to say, it does something to him. Consumes the heart of a person's care, cultures a perception of grandiosity that excludes other folk.
As Herm thought this, he quickly caught wind of some socialite taking a downward look at his kin.
I heard something. You hear many strange and odd things from sources. Those little folk, I heard they live in the trees like beasts and birds.
Herm frowned, and his anger drew his ears redder and heart racier.
That does not surprise me. Such folk are just too small to be of any use. Better they stay there than burden the world with their height.
Suddenly, the gossiping socialites noticed Herm and saw his frowning. They moved backward and away into the crowd, red-cheeked and foolish. Herm continued to listen as various people spoke ill to bolster themselves and their pomp. Although tasteless, he enjoyed listening and observing people to know their intent and quality. This royal occasion was no exception to this habit.
It was no surprise. Folk of this ilk often spoke ill of others, whether true, partially true, or not at all. Folk in these places cannot resist reinforcing ill views and types of knowings that Arcanus referred to as
Insane and without care.
Arcanus would often avoid such people, and it was uncommon for him to share spaces with royal households, although they, wizards, could, and some do. The wizard folk tended to advise those who sought their counsel, and generally remain aloof. Wizards were often located in the most difficult of regions, as elusive as the ancient creatures of old. Herm wondered, as it was curious indeed, why Arcanus would come to this event. Herm thought it odd, but the king and Arcanus have history, though Herm knew not the canon of their ties. Herm learned not to push Arcanus for answers to things, especially private matters relating to his past. The old Skyward was stubborn and ill-tempered during travel. Arcanus would say,
Herm, the wisest of us all sit still for very long periods, resisting the needs of the flesh as able, and like trees. Beautiful trees, and the mountains, majestic yet still and unmoving, contemplate the universe.
Herm would try to mimic the old Skyward, holding up the usual index finger with a closed-eyed expression, while the other hand stroked a beard. After which, the old Skyward would usually cite some old text, as long as the scrolls in nestled, tattered, vaulted libraries, untouched by their forgotten curators. Often, Herm would yawn during such speeches.
as dry as bread without butter.
He would call them. In such moments, Herm and the old Skyward would argue about the fact that Arcanus was always late for things, and Arcanus would bring up Herm's attitude. Herm reflected,
Still, the old Skyward has much to do and offer this world, and I, Herm Thistledown II, have much to do with him.
Herm wasn't exactly sure where he fit into this world. Neither tall nor short, he often found himself playing the middleman between the eccentric, odd, and high peoples of this world, and yet in between all peoples, even the low of this world, making his kind both loved and ignored by all. Tonight, the attention was on the occasion of royal importance, but the late arrival of Arcanus began to catch up with his nerves. In an effort to settle the royal attendees, Herm said for what felt like the 1,000th time,
Yes. He's addressing the crowds in the west or maybe the south. We'll be here any moment now, I am certain of it.
The appointee nodded and shrugged. Just then, Arcanus emerged from the veil of some unknown place, dusted off the fauna, Arcanus appearing as skywards usually do, dressed plain, simple, and carrying a staff.
There you are!
Herm's passive aggression cloaked. Herm teased frustratingly.
Did you get lost in another debate with the elves?
Arcanus frowned momentarily, then his face softened and he said,
My deepest apologies, Herm. The world held my gaze longer than I expected it to.
Sure it did. Oh, I believe you. The world is a vast place for such allure.
Herm teased, nudging his friend gently.
Next time, remember astronomy before wine.
Arcanus paused and frowned, then laughed as he did when Herm held a given attitude with partial annoyance.
Herm, as always, your accusations lack merit. As you know, wine rarely touches my lips, unless a special occasion should ask for it. In any case, let us now enjoy the festivities. The night calls for merriment.
What? The night calls, I tell you know, I have been waiting, taking all kinds of abuse from people.
Herm went on and on. Arcanus nodded, and Herm could see the old skyward was ignoring his annoyance.
Oh, forget it, as long as you're sober.
Herm said to some volume as they wandered through the crowd. Herm fell into step beside his old skyward friend. Arcanus greeted the king and queen, saying,
Your Majesties, good tidings, good celebrations, a merry greeting to you both.
The king smiled and embraced Arcanus. Herm's surprised face was as plain as day. His suspicions and speculations were somewhat confirmed, at least more valid than before. He knew that Arcanus and the king had history, but a hug... Well, Herm knew that the king and the old skyward must have deeper ties than he realized. Arcanus offered his blessing to the king's wife and their child. After formalities had ended, Arcanus stood and was introduced to the crowd by the king's wife. All fell silent and awaited. Arcanus cleared his throat and closed his eyes. Herm always thought this was a bit dramatic. In Herm's view, just get up, speak, and leave. But no. The old skyward always appeared to enjoy his own voice, at least in Herm's interpretation. Arcanus then spoke.
The day turns to night, and we all gather as we have many times before. However, today such a cycle is bathed in merriment and life. The third wife is to sire a son, a glorious gift to continue the legacy.
Arcanus went on for what felt like an age, yet all were enamored by his words, as if a sound from his knowing and conveyances sprung forth and touched the moment. Herm waited in the background, sighing and looking at his timekeep, too short to be noticed and too unimportant to be considered. Herm thought,
Too small, too unimportant.
Arcanus continued.
The sky is bright with the stars of the Athalorim. Surely they are here to bless such an occasion.
Herm always wondered what the story was with the Athalorim. Most thought of them as beliefs, something to be debated in the Hall of Mythic. To Herm, they represented something about connection between things, like the connection between good company and tea. Although he could not deeply convey it in words, he had this sense that truth was somehow about goodness. A simple approach to the topic, but Herm considered it part of his essential reflections. All of a sudden, a darkness fell over Arcanus, and he collapsed. The king and Herm rushed to his aid. They took him backstage, and the queen calmed the crowd and settled their minds, reassuring them with a humorous indication of,
It seems our speaker has had too much to drink.
The crowd laughed as she then beckoned for merriment to continue, as it had undisturbed.
Now let us continue as before. Let the celebrations commence. Let merriment continue.
Arcanus fell into realms and states unknown to all who walk the earth but for the other three wizards. The wizards called him, beckoned him in their intent, and demanded a meeting, for a great damned and unknown force bends and twists to purge life. Tears streamed down Arcanus's face as the king and Herm looked at each other, their concern growing. The king, confused and puzzled, was reassured by Herm that this was common for wizards, although in truth he had not seen Arcanus in this state before. The king momentarily returned to the festivities to bolster morale and create the appearance that it was indeed all right, and it was wine-related. Herm lightly tapped Arcanus a few times on the cheek.
Oh no, damn it, earth under my feet. Are you all right, friend? Come on, Arcanus, friend. I told you, stay away from the wine. Silly old Skyward.
Arcanus saw visions of an impending and building cold, a spiking power, seamless and old. It crept and hid and stored itself age by age. The other wizards showed him their knowings on the matter. The vision grew and took shape and built into a crescendo. All that was light turned into darkness, and all that grew and lived fell into decay and dust. All of a sudden, Arcanus popped open his eyes and roared directly into the sky, two words that soared upward.
Arrest me!
Then he turned and looked at Herm and swiftly gathered his posture and strength.
Follow! Herm! Do not delay!
Herm rushed and gathered his things, apologized to the king and queen, and all happened so fast.
Ooh, sorry, got to go. Wonderful celebrations, just gorgeous. Cake was excellent, top draw. Best I have tasted anywhere. Oh, and many blessings.
Come quickly. Herm, this is not the time to dither.
The king and queen felt unnerved by this rushing, as they had just moments ago, when they heard the booming voice of Arcanus. Herm continued to fluster.
Oh, ooh, got the potions? Yes, and the tea. Oh, mustn't forget the tea. No, old Skyward so grumpy without it. And the vegetables, potatoes, 2 and 4 carrots, and the, oh gosh, yes, and got the dubri.
Arcanus descended the staircase, heading away from the royal event, with Herm struggling to keep up, juggling numerous items. Later that night, after the festivities had ended, the king managed to slip away. He sought out Arcanus and Herm just as they had finished settling their steeds and preparing their equipment for the journey ahead. The king approached and greeted his friend.
Dear friend Arcanus, what is going on?
Arcanus replied,
Hello, friend. Nothing is ongoing. No concern. We are simply late for something. You know me. I am an odd fellow.
He reassured the king, hoping he would not notice his avoidance. The king was not naive and demanded a real answer.
I thought we were friends, you and I. Yet, when I ask of you the truth, you give me avoidance.
Arcanus closed his eyes and opened them with a sigh, saying,
You are right, friend. I apologize. In truth, I am unsure. The vision, a common occurrence, but this vision was, however, uncommon.
Arcanus then spoke of harder times ahead.
There are darker times ahead of us, friend. Herm and I must depart without delay. I must ask of you trust until more is known.
The king became unsettled by this mention of darker times, and began to talk as if his friend's vision was perhaps without merit. Arcanus, seeing this, sternly spoke with authority.
Son of Thanedras, hero of the western plains, slayer of Gleduin, trust me, as your fathers and forefathers did.
The king, somewhat settled by Arcanus's gravity, gathered his strength of heart, realizing his error, and apologized.
Yes, I hear you, friend. My senses have returned. I trust you. Please inform me soon. I will do what is in my power.
Arcanus touched the king on his forearm, smiled with gentle care, saying,
I also share in your concern, and will call your aid when more is known, as to better serve it.
Departing, the king bid them farewell and headed back to the palace. Herm and Arcanus set off. A journey of great difficulty lay ahead. Thus ends Part 1 of our tale, In the Land of Faenore. Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this production by Terrestrial Media, you can find more diverse works on our social media accounts. See the link in the description for more.